Well, the Trump administration is increasing pressure on Venezuela, accusing President Nicolás Maduro's regime of trafficking drugs to the U.S. 15,000 U.S. soldiers are now stationed in the region. There are also 15 U.S. naval vessels off the Venezuelan coast, including the United States' largest aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald Ford, which can carry up to 90 planes. The U.S. has also quietly been reactivating the long-abandoned Roosevelt Roads Naval Base on the U.S. territory of Puerto Rico. Upgrades to the base suggest the U.S. is preparing for sustained operations that could support a possible confrontation with Venezuela. DW's Benjamin Alvarez Gruber reports now from Ceiba in Puerto Rico, where the former Roosevelt Roads Naval Base is located.
For years, these were the only planes that residents of Ceiba in northeastern Puerto Rico ever saw around this area. A mural on the wall outside a local sports bar.
But that changed when the Pentagon decided to send dozens of F-35 fighter jets that you can see here right behind me that are operating on a daily basis from a naval base, one of several bases that the U.S. has here in Puerto Rico, a strategic point for the White House's efforts to increase pressure on Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro.
And it's not just planes arriving at Roosevelt Roads Naval Base, reopening for the first time since 2004. Crews have been upgrading taxiways and setting up tents. Communications gear and a mobile air traffic control tower have also been set up, this footage from a Reuters investigation shows. The sense of a military buildup is palpable in this town.
This base brought a lot of advantages. We want the military movement because they're here to defend us. Whoever comes to throw bombs at us, they're here to defend us.
The noise might be a problem now because there were years without the military base. But people get used to them, especially in this town.
The base brings jobs.
When the first jets arrived in September, there was concern about the base's location, the mayor of Ceiba told us.
Having this naval base here means there was already military presence here. But when these planes first arrived, there was concern among residents of our town, since we know that these planes have specific missions.
He dismissed concerns the base creates an additional risk in case of a direct military confrontation.
We are already in the spotlight because we are a U.S. territory, but having them here puts us at ease because U.S. technology is very advanced.
Further south, the world's largest aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald Ford, arrived in the Caribbean with dozens of warplanes on board. Critics argue that the goal of Operation Southern Spear, as it's known, is not only to stop drugs trafficking, as the Pentagon says. Many suspect Washington is aiming for regime change in Caracas. But even with US President Donald Trump recently expressing willingness for dialogue with Venezuela's Maduro, the uncertainty over a potential military confrontation between the US and Venezuela remains. And in Ceiba, Puerto Rico, many residents fear that if this happens, they'd feel it here too.
Well, let's go now to our correspondent, Benjamin Alvarez Gruber. He is in Ceiba, Puerto Rico this evening. Benjamin, where do they see this military buildup leading to? Are they worried about what could happen?
So nobody here in Ceiba that we spoke to over these last couple of days is indifferent to what has been happening here. This arrival of these F-35 fighter jets, also several helicopters. We saw some cargo aircraft on this base here right behind us, but especially the older generation has many memories, as we also just heard there in the piece, of the time when there were many stationed here. It was one of the biggest bases actually here in the region. For the youngers is, of course, the sound that they hear all day round with these F-35 fighter jets. But for many, there isn't concern, not only what a military escalation with Venezuela would look like, but also if this could damage the relation that Puerto Rico, that is a U.S. territory, has with other countries in Latin America.
And I want to get your take and what you're hearing from people there about what the president says. He says that the increased U.S. military presence is all about battling the region's drug cartels. But isn't this level of a military buildup, isn't it rather disproportionate? I mean, if fighting drugs is Washington's goal, should they be doing something different?
That's right, and many are following what is happening with these strikes, this very controversial strikes on alleged drug boats, what's happening with the USS Gerald Ford, the world's largest aircraft carrier that was also close to Puerto Rico in this last couple of days. And even though many want to see Nicolás Maduro out of power in Venezuela and Caracas want to see a political change, they are not quite sure how that can be achieved. We have seen this pressure being increased not only by the White House, also by the State Department, by saying that this cartel de los soles that they say that Nicolás Maduro is orchestrating, is in charge of, will be designated a terrorist organization. That would mean that Nicolás Maduro for the U.S. would be a terrorist as well.
President Trump has floated, just last few days, the possibility of talks with Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro. Could this defuse what is an increasingly tense situation in the region?
So if we remember last week, many were closely following this, thinking there could be imminent strikes. We've seen these pictures of this show of force of these several ships in the Caribbean with the fighter jets flying along with them. We had some of them in the piece there too. It's not quite clear what the White House wants to talk about with Nicolás Maduro, where this conversation would actually happen, on which level. We've heard that Maduro is open to talking to White House officials. But we have to remember here again that he accused the U.S. of inciting a war. He said that Washington is interested in the oil reserves that Venezuela has. So we might see some movement there too after this show of force and after this changes, not only here on this base in northeast Puerto Rico, but also on other several bases that the U.S. has here, where we've seen ships arriving and also many changes being upgraded, bases being upgraded for an arrival of what could be even more troops here to this island of Puerto Rico.
DW's Benjamin Alvarez Gruber in Ceiba, Puerto Rico. Benjamin, as always, thank you.